Let's dive into the discussions shaping the nation.
Thanks, Ciancora. It is. Ciancora, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to this evening, and thank you, Minister, for your attendance. I really appreciate it. The DART Plus West project was touted, Minister, as the first of the projects of the broader DART Plus programmes that would be delivered. It is a much-needed rail improvement line. It's a project for North Kildare, important also in that it would provide a sustainable and enhanced rail service for users. The project between Hazelhatch to Houston is expected to increase hourly traffic from 5,000 to 20,000 commuters alone. Kildare commuters have the second longest commute in the state, Minister. It is hoped that the project will improve capacity in Maynooth and M3 Parkway lines into Dublin's existing and to be expanded DART network. The DART Plus West project applied for a railway order to Bord Pleanála in July 2022. Since its inception, Minister, communities in Kilcock and Sallins have campaigned for the inclusion of their towns in the first phase of this rollout, because it makes no financial or engineering sense to bring these services as far as Maynooth and Hazelhatch and Selbridge without going that extra little bit to fulfil Kilcock and Sallins nice. And I'm sure Deputy O'Friel here would say, bring it to Newbridge as well while we're at it. Yeah, I know. But for months, concerned residents of Kilcock and many other towns spoke about the vitality, Minister, that this service would bring. It is seen as an essential part of the development of Kilcock and indeed wider North Kildare. And all along we were facing the prospect of the DART Plus having its depot in Kilcock, but no service in Kilcock. But now that this is off the cards, where will this depot go? It can go to the other side of Kilcock, to Enfield, Minister. There are lots of opportunities here for a park and ride service. And of course I acknowledge the delivery of this extension to Kilcock is dependent on the service and the delivery of the DART Plus West project in general. But some sort of pre-planning, I think, can be done in tandem with the existing process underway, Minister. We're told that an extension to DART Plus is an objective of the National Transport Authority, and while it's welcome that this is in the Greater Dublin Area Transport Strategy, the timeline for railway order to the end of this is 20 years. That's a generation of the 100,000 plus commuters who don't have that option. And while the private car remains the most popular mode of commute in Kildare, we have seen an increase in the use of public transport between the most recent two census profiles. Much of that is down to the increase in provision of bus services and accessibility to existing rail services. And I'd like to commend previous governments for their work and significant investment in that, because it has to be noted that there has been a significant increase in public transport services in Kildare. However, we're told that the DART Plus project will require additional funding to the current National Development Plan. Has this been estimated yet, Minister? I understand that mid-term review of the National Development Plan was or is to happen. What is the update in relation to this? And finally, last year, Minister James Lawless announced that funding had been secured to prepare for the future rollout of DART to Sallins, Naas and Kilcock. And really, I welcome this wholeheartedly. But Minister, what does this mean exactly? Is there details available on this? Can you confirm that the contingency of the DART extending to Kilcock was and is not dependent on the depot being in Kilcock? And when can people reasonably expect to see DART trains in Kilcock, Sallins and Naas? Thank you,
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Good morning, Ciancora, and can I thank Deputy Farrelly for raising the matter, and I'm taking the matter for the Minister for Transport, so apologies that he's not here. And it is an important one. Having been a student in Maynooth, I have seen the growth of Kilcock and Sallins and Maynooth itself, but improving public transport services infrastructure is essential to improving citizens' quality of life and achieving our decarbonisation goals. Achieving these goals has been set out in the programme for government. The National Transport Authority, the NTA, has statutory responsibility for transport planning in the Greater Dublin area, including County Kildare, and the NTA's Greater Dublin Area Transport Strategy, which was approved by the Minister for Transport in January of 2023, sets out a framework for transport investment across the region over a 20-year period, as we've said, between 2022 to 2042. And it also provides a clear statement of transport planning policy for counties including Kildare. I would clarify for the Deputy that the plan proposals related to DART Plus, West and South West projects and the current position of the proposal in the planning and development stage are, in terms of DART Plus and West projects, aims to increase passenger capacity in the Maynooth and M3 Parkway rail lines. This will be achieved by changing to electrified high-capacity DART trains, increasing the frequency of train service between Maynooth Station and the M3 Parkway Station to Connolly, and to a new proposed Spencer Dock Station. The project also included the construction of a new DART depot facility. A planned decision called a railway order was granted by An Bord Pleanála for DART Plus in July of last year, subject to a number of conditions, notably that the proposed depot west of Maynooth not be constructed due to concerns in relation to flood risk. Oireachtas and the NTA are currently engaging on the submission of a new railway order to An Bord Pleanála for the proposed depot. There are also currently 2 judicial reviews lodged in the High Court against the granted railway order, and these issues are currently being examined before a decision on next steps is being made. The DART Plus South West project includes electrification of the Kildare line from Dublin Houston to Hazelhatch Selbridge, the provision of 4 tracks between Houston Station and Park West Cherry Orchard, and a new station to Houston West. A railway order was approved by An Bord Pleanála for this project in late last year, and Oireachtas are now working to progress the preparation of procurement documents for this project to enable later construction. While neither the Kilcock nor Sallins are included in the extended electrification works proposed under DART Plus programme, consideration has been given to the efficient, effective and sustainable movement of people and goods in the Greater Dublin area. Since the submission of the railway order applications for the DART Plus West and DART Plus South West projects to An Bord Pleanála, the new Greater Dublin Area Transport Strategy 2020-2042 has been finalised and adopted. The new strategy includes an objective to extend the DART system further westwards to Kilcock and Naas Sallins, and it is intended that the extension of DART to Naas and Sallins would be linked with the provision of a major park and ride site in the order of 1,000 spaces in the Sallins bypass, with the potential of a new train station to be developed alongside the park and ride. The proposed extensions to Kilcock and Naas and Sallins will be developed as a separate follow-on projects to DART Plus programme. Planning work on these extensions could commence this year. The exact timeline for these 2 extensions will be developed as design planning work gets underway. The projects will also be advanced subject to funding and securing relevant approvals, and as such the Department of Transport will consider them as part of its submissions to the review of the National Development Plan, which is planned to take place later this year. And Deputy, I'll be happy to have you have officials talk to the Department further to your submission this afternoon.
Thank you, Minister Deputy Farrell.
Thank you, Carla. And Minister, thank you very much for that comprehensive reply. I really appreciate that. And like you, I've spent a lot of time in Maynooth over the years, Minister, as a student, as an educator. And I think what really emphasises the need, specifically for Kilcock and also South Kildare, is that sometimes you're quicker getting from Dublin City out to Maynooth than you are getting from Kilcock to Maynooth. And that's because the public transport might just let you down, or it's not interlinked, and that really emphasises the need for this service to be rolled out. I appreciate that it is now included in that strategy, but I think the concern for many in Kilcock and Sallins is the time frame for that strategy is potentially 20 years away, and we need it urgently. We know we need it much sooner than that, and if there's ways at all in which we can incorporate those towns into the existing works, it really would be appreciated, and there's an evidence base to that. So I'd love to engage further with the officials in your department, Minister, and again really appreciate your time and effort today.
Thank you, Deputy Farrell.
Good Deputy. In terms of, again, on behalf of the Minister for Transport, can I thank you again for your engagement and the topical issues submitted. In terms of current developments, the DART Plus West and DART Plus South West projects are moving to the next stage in light of recent planning decisions. Specifically, An Bord Pleanála has recently given conditional approval for the DART Plus West and a full approval for the DART Plus South West railway order applications. While it should be noted that the 2 judicial review applications to the railway order approval for DART Plus West have been lodged, Oireachtas are now working to progress the preparation of procurement documents for both projects to enable later construction. Oireachtas and the NTA are also engaging in relation to a new railway order for a depot. While neither, as I said, Kilcock and Sallins are currently included in the DART network under DART Plus programme, the requirement to extend the DART service to both locations has been recognised in the Greater Dublin Area Transport Strategy 2022-2042. These extensions to DART services will be developed as separate follow-on projects to DART Plus programme, and subject to securing relevant funding and approvals. It is necessary to go through the full feasibility and optioneering processes, and can I assure the Deputy that projects will be progressed in line with the requirements of the infrastructure guidelines, and that public consultation processes will be undertaken at appropriate stages as projects are progressed. In the shorter term, I look forward to the development of new battery electric DART carriages ordered under the DART Plus fleet project, which have started testing and are expected to enter service in 2026 on the commuter line serving communities between Dublin and Drogheda. And it's great to see public transport projects progressing and achieving the government's goal to provide more sustainable transport options to the Greater Dublin area in line with the government policy. And can I apologise to the Deputy that I didn't have a copy of the script for him, but I'd be happy to give him my script. So,
Appreciate that. Thank you, Minister. And we move now to topical number 2. Deputy Sean O'Friel to ask the Minister for Defence to discuss the provisions of a new management structure for the Curragh Plains.
Dus bwyd yn mwfych ysgol latsa, chiawn cwrla sucht yn over tawchtog sio around who stress liam yn cedol sias gomalesh yn bert Aristota ta lahar Macarja Jerry Buttimer agus Neil Richmond ta me kinta gan yenishid sar job sna post yn y taco agus leis na dŵr gysir taco e Colina agus stress liam gomalesh yn chap da nua o Kildare Huig ma colacca Egon o Ferril. The Curragh is a near 5,000 acre plain located between Newbridge, Kildare and Kilcullen. It's a limestone plain. It lies over a massive aquifer that has the potential to supply water to many parts of the country and perhaps the country. It's a valuable national and local resource. We have a problem. The problem has existed for many years in some aspects, insofar as it is used quite correctly by the bloodstock sector, by the sheep farming sector, it's used by the defence forces, and it's used for recreation and amenity purposes by the public. But there has never been any effective control or management of those uses. I wouldn't want to see any of those uses inhibited, but I would like to see them managed. But in the last number of years, the last 6 or 8 years, we have seen a new phenomenon develop, and it's where hordes of caravans descend upon the Curragh Plains between the months of June, and this year it lasted until October. In the early years, they could be numbered in the dozens. There are literally almost uncountable numbers that were present in 2024 at a variety of locations across the Curragh Plains. The cost of the clean-up after this unauthorised holiday camp was eventually vacated was something of the order of €190,000 just for 1 year. Now, could anyone in this chamber imagine the Phoenix Park been invaded and been turned into an official holiday camp? Could anyone imagine the lakes of Killarney or Glenveigh National Park or any other resource of similar importance in the country? No, they couldn't, and it would never happen. And why would it never happen? Because there is an effective management structure in place for those resources. No such resource exists in respect of the Curragh. In 2015, I published a bill attempting to set out criteria under which at least a consultative body could be appointed, made up of the interested users and including Kildare County Council. It would be my view that what's now in the programme of government, where it says that the government will operate a conservation plan for the Curragh and it will seek to identify the agency best suited to manage the historic plains. I've no doubt but that my constituency colleague, Minister Martin Hayden, who was one of the negotiators of the programme for government, was instrumental in ensuring that that provision was included in the plan. It's great to have it there. The plan for government is full of wonderful aspirations. But can I tell you, this is one aspiration that has to be acted on urgently, because we cannot have a recurrence in 2025 of what we had in Kildare in 2024. So what I'm asking is, When is there going to be action? Because there needs to be effective action before June of this year.
Thank you very much, Deputy O'Friel. Deputy Minister Richmond.
Gurmagat Ken Corla, I take this on behalf of the Taoiseach as his Minister of State. From the outset, if it is appropriate, Ken Corla, may I pay credit to the Deputy for his own time in the chair, and particularly his mentoring and guidance of new TDs the first time they rose in debates like this, and bearing in mind that my first topical issue was given during the height of the first lockdown of the COVID pandemic. I think these are far more comfortable surrounds for those who will be making their first interventions. The Curragh, Ken Corla, as state land vested in the Minister for Defence, is recognised as a working environment for the state's defence forces, as well as being a place of historical and cultural importance, the main occupiers of which are the Defence Forces in the Curragh camp and the Curragh racecourse, which leases a large tract of land. Additionally, the plains are used by sheep owners who avail of rights of pasture on the lands, and both locals and visitors to Kildare as a major natural amenity that I'm sure all of us have enjoyed at various times. The Curragh is, by our measurement, Deputy, 4,870 acres, and is one of the most open and accessible areas in the country. While I would not wish to see this level of accessibility diminished as a public representative, I know that you are acutely aware that this has presented a number of challenges for management, as you have laid out in relation to illegal camping, but also in the area, Deputy, of illegal dumping, not just as a result of the camping, but other impacts. 2024 saw many illegal encampments set up over the course of the summer months, which caused a great deal of disruption and anxiety to local stakeholders, as the Deputy alluded to. The Department of Defence does not accept that those occupying these encampments have any right to reside on the Curragh Plains, and as such has been engaged with the CSSO in anticipation of any potential trespassing to ensure that all legal steps are taken promptly to protect the plains. In the case of trespass or criminal damage, it is the responsibility of An Garda Síochána to police the situation, and the Department of Defence has already engaged with them on this issue. In terms of addressing these challenges in the longer term, as the Deputy is aware, the Department of Defence is working to ensure that we move to a modern and sustainable regulatory model in managing this historically important landscape. As the Deputy will be aware, for the last several years the Department of Defence has been collaborating with Kildare County Council on the Curragh Consultancy project, seeking to develop a sustainable future management method and to highlight the importance and significance. The project came to completion in December of last year, 2024, when the Curragh Plains Conservation Management Plan and the associated branding, interpretation and wayfinding strategy were published. The consultation process identified the need for a review of the Curragh bylaws and the Curragh of Kildare Act and potential amendments to provide effective solutions to the challenges faced. The report also identified the need to consider a dedicated agency responsible for the Curragh, or to assign responsibility for the site to an existing agency with the necessary expertise. Throughout the project, both the Department of Defence and Kildare County Council remain cognisant of the need to have in place a means of ensuring the conservation of this ancient landscape, while also enabling the area to receive the recognition it deserves. The plan laid out opportunities through which the area can be uniquely identified, and also scoped out the development potential of the area as a high-value visitor attraction. It also aims to balance the needs of the respective users. This government is committed to the implementation of these recommendations to address both the opportunities and challenges, as can be seen, as the Deputy alluded to, by its inclusion in the programme of government, and I appreciate his magnanimous reference to my colleague Martin Hayden, which I think is merited, but I think it should be reflective of your consistent advocacy, Deputy, in this area, as well as the draft legislation you produced in 2015. But I do want to thank Ken Corla, the Deputy, again for raising this question. I would like to assure him that it is the intention of the Taoiseach to ensure that the Curragh Plains, as an important element of our shared heritage, is protected into the future, while also ensuring maximum benefit to the local population and those who come to visit. And to his question of when, the timeline, I cannot give it out exactly at the moment, but it is something that is of pressing need, and it's something that the Minister of Defence intends to attend to instantly.
Deputy.
Thank you very much, Minister, and I want to acknowledge the fact that, having raised this on QPL last week, the Taoiseach subsequently spoke to me and indicated that it was a priority for him. But I have to stress to you that the wheels of democracy and the system's wheels here move very, very slowly. I have to also put it to you that the Department of Defence has been remiss in dealing with An Garda Síochána. An Garda Síochána have been active, as far as I'm concerned, in trying to deal with the situation that has existed. There is a court order, a High Court order, dating back 20 years that empowers the Gardaí and the Department of Defence to do something about illegal encampments. When it came to the crunch, the Department of Defence told the Gardaí to do nothing. not to proceed. So we cannot continue to do nothing, and something must be in place before this summer comes. We cannot allow this to happen, because if it does, it's not just about the degradation of the planes. It's not just about the real damage that's being done to the bloodstock industry. It's not about just the impeding of the recreational use of the Curragh. It's about the risks that arise from large-scale, unauthorised development of any nature taking place in an area where there is a total lack of control. And that is the particular problem. And if something happens, if somebody is injured or hurt or some other travesty occurs, we will all be very seriously concerned. But the point is, we have a short period of time now in which to take action, and I would urge that action be taken immediately.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Ken Corla, and I thank Deputy O'Farrell for his supplementary contribution. Ken Corla, for the information of the House, the responsibility, as the Minister with responsibility for defence, the Taoiseach is the custodian and guardian of the Curragh lands pursuant to the provisions of the Curragh of Kildare Act 1961, and under that Act the Curragh Plains is recognised as a working environment for the State's Defence Forces, as well as being a place of historical and cultural importance. As I've already stated, the Taoiseach remains absolutely fully committed to pursuing a modern and sustainable regulatory model in managing the historically important landscape that is the Curragh. The Curragh Plains Conservation Management Plan, having been finalised and published in December 2024, is currently under consideration by officials in the Department of Defence. And I absolutely take on board the Deputy's very sincere concern that this needs to be considered and acted upon in advance of the summer months, and I will take that firmly back to the Taoiseach. But as the Deputy has already alluded to, the Taoiseach is well aware of the need for this to be acted on swiftly, and the Conservation Management Plan will provide the foundation for implementing the recommendations identified, including the progression of that management. Any such proposals will be brought before Government to decide on a future management structure, and I would like to reiterate that it is the intention of the Taoiseach to ensure that the Curragh Plains is protected into the future while also ensuring maximum benefit. It is simply unacceptable that nothing is done. Something has to be done, something has to be done very seriously. The Taoiseach has accepted that, the Government has accepted that, work has commenced on doing that, and making sure that is implemented and making sure that that is enforced, Deputy. And I think enforcement will be key to this, and I fully take on board the comments that you have made in relation to court orders, but I won't delve too much into them, and you understand why more than anyone else in this House. However, I will again raise this with the Taoiseach tomorrow, and I will make sure that the Deputy is kept fully abreast of the matter going forward.
Thank you, Minister. We now move to the third topical. Deputy Joanna Byrne to the Minister for Health to discuss funding for the Save Our Sons and Daughters Suicide Prevention Group.
Minister, Suicide Ireland has provided a crisis lifeline for 17 years since its inception in 2007 for people struggling with suicidal ideation, self-harming, depression, bereavement, stress and anxiety through free, confidential counselling in person and remotely, a 24/7 free phone helpline and an online messaging service. This work is supported by a team of 206 volunteer counsellors across Ireland, and without core funding and promised government intervention, this service, as you know, is at a risk of imminent closure. Last year in October, during Mental Health Awareness Month, a Sinn Féin delegation, including myself, met with SOSAD representatives here in Leinster House. Following this, on the floor of the House, our spokesperson for mental health, Deputy Mark Ward, raised this crisis facing the organisation directly with you, seeking urgent government intervention. Collectively, as a group, we then wrote to you and asked you to meet with them and facilitate a meeting with the HSE and SOSAD. A positive meeting between yourself and SOSAD took place in early November 2024. This gave the group hope, and crucially, they were given a personal commitment from yourself to secure interim funding to keep the doors open whilst they explored sustainability options with the HSE. Since then, unfortunately, they've had no contact back from yourself, no answer to their phone calls or emails, and no answer on the delivery of the promise of the desperately needed funding to keep them going. Their first meeting with the HSE took place in January 2025, and the group are now actively engaging with them and planning for sustainable future funding. However, this isn't going to be possible if they can't keep the doors open in the meantime, and with only a few €1,000 in the bank today, the hope of continuing to firefight is looking more bleak by the minute. The interim funding is essential for their survival until they can secure long-term sustainable supports with the HSE. Since November last year, I've written to you on this, my party leader has written to you on this, our party spokesperson on mental health has written to you on this, and other colleagues around the country have done the same. I've met with SOSAD several times in their Drogheda offices, and I see firsthand how important this service is. And Minister, for context, let me quickly put on record some of the statistics that will prove, if it's ever in doubt, how invaluable this service is to my hometown and city of Drogheda, right throughout Loudoun, the North East, and indeed nationwide. In 2024, the service offered over 23,000 counselling sessions to over 1,900 individual clients from 28 counties and 150 different nationalities. Drogheda facilitated over 8,000 sessions, Meath nearly 5,000, Cavan nearly 3,000, Laois nearly 3,000, Dundalk over 2,000 and Monaghan over 1,200. Almost 4% of their clients are under 18 and 32% are younger than 25. A further 25% are aged between 26 and 35, so that's almost 57% of these people are under 35. 65% of their clients are female, 34% are male, and their helpline offered circa 250 hours of support throughout last year. It's simply unthinkable and unacceptable that any minister or government are prepared to gamble with such vital community-based mental health supports. The emergency interim funding that was promised must be urgently provided, Minister. You have an opportunity to intervene here at the 11th hour before it's too late, and I urge you, and I even plead with you, to engage with SOSAD as a matter of urgency and make good on your commitments.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you, Ciarán Comhairle. I want to thank the Deputy for raising this really important matter in the House this evening. I am very familiar, as you said, with the work of Save Our Sons and Daughters, or SOSAD, who make a really significant contribution to counselling service provision in North East Leinster, and I think it is important that this is acknowledged. I have acknowledged that previously. SOSAD is not currently funded by HSE Louth Mental Health Services, and I am aware that in August 2023 SOSAD applied for Section 39 funding. This was not progressed at the time, as HSE Louth Meath Mental Health Services were not procuring new services, as all funding had been allocated in line with the HSE National Service Plan. I understand that last year SOSAD's financial situation deteriorated as fundraising and donations were reducing. And we've seen this a lot around the country after COVID. This was brought to my attention in the autumn, and I met them in November 2024, and we did have, as you said, a very good meeting, along with officials from the Department of Health to discuss the situation. And I was very, very clear at the time, and I asked for interim funding to be provided, an amount so that it would help them get them over the Christmas time, and that they would be able to meet with the HSE and try and agree a service level agreement going forward. Funding to organisations such as SOSAD is arranged through the Section 39 process via local HSE mental health services. It's not directly allocated by myself. And following that meeting, I requested the HSE in Loudoun Meath make contact with SOSAD to outline the steps to be taken for any potential funding application. I accept the initial contact was slower than I would have liked, and when I came back after the election, it was one of the first things I checked. And I'm glad that that contact, the direct contact, is made now for approximately 2 months, and my office receives regular updates on their engagements. As per any negotiations between HSE and any charity or organisation, information such as audited accounts, annual reports, government arrangements and board of management details are required, so the HSE can undertake due diligence as part of consideration of any potential funding arrangements. That's across all NGOs, it's across all organisations that the HSE fund through the mental health budget. I understand that SOSAD are now working to provide all of this relevant information to the HSE. I do take on board the point you're making, though, that while they are trying to provide this relevant information, they're in a critical situation. I do know that the HSE Louth Meath our support in SOSAD in their readiness to meet the corporate and the clinical governance. You spoke about 206 volunteers. They're in place for 17 years. But in order for us to fund any individual organisation to provide supports, and I accept and acknowledge all the really good work they do, but with 206 volunteers, clinical governance and corporate governance is essential across any organisation in order to receive state funding. Nationally, a key objective of mine is to improve access to counselling and enhance supports for suicide and suicide bereavement. And I have allocated additional funding for these services this year. And I was struck by the fact that you said, I think about 65%, 35% male-female. We're seeing that all over the country, where 2/3 of all services that are accessed for mental health are being accessed by females and only 1/3 by males, which is a real challenge. I'll come back in the next piece.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Byrne.
Thanks, Minister, and thank you for your response. And it's very heartfelt, and I do believe that you understand the sentiments and the urgency of this. The stark reality is this organisation is in a really, really vulnerable position. Its closure would be devastating, a devastating loss to thousands and thousands of people. And what's more, I don't believe the HSE and other service providers would be able to fill that gap in their absence, particularly not long term, but certainly not in the short term. Mental health and suicide is so prevalent in our society that in any room at any given stage, most people have been impacted by it in some way, whether it's through themselves or their nearest or dearest. It's without a doubt a dark cloud that's hanging over us and never too far away. Lives lost through suicide are probably one form of death that can be preventable, and it's organisations like SOSAD that play a huge part in preventing many of these tragic losses. I guess the question is, are these lives worth saving? And if they are, that intervention is needed now. And it's my understanding that the interim funding discussed between yourself and SOSAD was immediate stopgap funding until the compliance and the governance procedures that you've outlined were able to be met with the HSE. SOSAD are doing that. The downfall seems to be this stopgap funding. So look, I'd really ask you to at least engage dialogue with SOSAD immediately, advise them of what next steps can be taken, and seek out, through your colleagues, through your counterparts, something that is going to keep these doors open. And I guarantee you, because I've got the commitment from them, the compliance will be met, the governance will be met, and all procedures will be thorough, and due process will be followed.
Thank you,
but they won't have time to do that if we can't keep them doors open, and lives will be lost.
Minister.
Thanks, Cian Corley.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy. And look, I just want to thank you for your advocacy on behalf of SOSAD Suicide Prevention Group. I don't want to see this service close. I can't be clearer than that. I want to assure the House I do understand how uncertainty around services can be very distressing for service users and their families, and they are providing vital supports to many. But I go back to the point again, I don't negotiate with individual organisations myself, so it's the HSE are provided the budget, and they action the budget then to provide supports and services all over the country. In order for that to happen, grant aid agreements with any organisation must be compliant with relevant governance codes and aligned to transparent financial arrangements such as audited accounts. To this end, relevance due diligence must be carried out. Specifically, HSE Louthmeath have requested information on corporate and clinical governance in line with HSE policies, and have provided guidance on the work that SOSAD will need to undertake to comply with the policies ahead of consideration of HSE funding of SOSAD. This will take time, and I of course recognise the frustration and the challenges of SOSAD. However, these steps are essential, and the HSE are not in a position to provide funding in the absence of these assurances on corporate and clinical governance. I have explored every single avenue I can to try and get some interim funding into them, but the HSE keep telling me that they're not in a position to provide funding in the absence of the assurances on corporate and clinical governance. The HSE remain available to SOSAD should any further guidance on the necessary work be needed. I engage with my officials. I have engaged with them on a weekly basis now. since Christmas in relation to SOSAD. It's top of the agenda, and I want to see SOSAD, I want to see them continue doing their good work, and I will keep a really close eye on this, Deputy. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Deputy. Now, last but not least, Deputy Malcolm Byrne to discuss the need for a primary care centre and more GPs in Gorey, County Wexford. Deputy Byrne.
Gurmagach, Ceann Comhairle agus Goban Buíochas Leisnara. Minister, you're familiar with this issue, as you know that in the Shannon I would have regularly raised this and have also been in regular correspondence with both your department and the HSE. But you know that access to GP care is a huge issue, particularly in North Wexford and in South Wicklow. North Wexford in particular being one of the fastest growing areas of the country. And during the general election, as we talked about before, the question of access to health services, in particular to a GP, was a major factor. There are waiting lists for existing surgeries. They provide a good service, but they can't take on board any more patients. And you'll also be very familiar, obviously, with the challenges around CAMS and indeed the Children's Disability Network team. So while there are, with 2 existing surgeries, primary care centres, there was, back in about 2010, 2011, the concept of a new primary care centre for Gorey and North Wexford was advanced. By 2018, even though a number of us had been raising that there would be problems with a particular site, planning was granted with a particular site, which, in spite of the problems continued being raised, the HSE chose to continue with this. By May of 2021, as there had been no progress, as you'll know, I raised this as a commencement matter in the Shannon, and with correspondence and the response to the commencement at the time, I had been told that there was a contractor appointed and indeed that construction would begin within 12 months. We go from May 2021 to May 2022, when there had been no progress, but I got the exact same answer then, and I was told then that there would be construction commencing within 12 months. In November 2022, and no surprise, there was no construction commenced, there was HSE correspondence which said that this would be treated as a priority. By November 2023, when we saw this priority, 12 months, no progress on it, I arranged a meeting with the then Minister, Stephen Donnelly, and HSE officials. And I always recall Minister Donnelly, and I thank him for this, but he said that even in spite of the delays and the cost overruns, that the National Children's Hospital would be finished quicker than the new primary care centre in Gorey, and I agreed with him. And the Minister, in fairness, intervened directly, so that in May 2024, 13 to 14 years after originally conceived, the HSE relented and accepted that the existing site was not suitable. So this thing was, which we were being told was an immediate priority. Finally, in November of 2024, expressions of suitable interest were advertised. And what I've been told, including in response to a parliamentary question and indeed correspondence I've had with the HSE from January, that following a discussion of the revised health service needs within the area with stakeholders, that we would see advertised on the e-tenders procurement platform the tender for the provision of a primary care centre in mid-Q1 2025. Now, I'm not sure how anyone else would define mid-Q1 2025, but for me, that's around now. So, Minister, I would be grateful if you could inform the House, but more importantly, the people in North Wexford who've been waiting for this service for a long time, if that is about to be advertised, and indeed that we will finally see a primary care centre under construction, hopefully by the end of this year, or at least during 2026.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy, for your question. And it's my first time speaking to you as Deputy, and congratulations. The Minister for Health has asked me to thank you, Deputy Byrne, for raising these matters and for the opportunity to update the Dáil on these important issues. The Government is clear that primary care centres are a very important part of the infrastructure needed for our health service. They provide a single point of access to healthcare services for patients in communities and central to moving significant amounts of healthcare away from our acute hospitals. Significant progress has been made in the delivery of primary care centres, with 179 opened to date. The need for a new primary care centre in Gorey was identified as part of the overall primary care centre development programme and had progressed under the operational lease model. However, the selected provider encountered difficulties regarding viability of the project, and following engagement to attempt to resolve the issues, the HSE took the decision last year to withdraw from the process and re-advertise in order to progress a primary care centre for Gorey. The HSE conducted a review of the current and future service needs for the Gorey area, and the HSE re-advertised this primary care centre on the e-tenders procurement platform in November 2024, which is the first step in the procurement process. The second step in the process will involve publishing the next stage of the advertisements to e-tenders before the end of this month. And Deputy, I also wait to see these e-tenders published, because there's a bundle of primary care centres that are included, one in Lismore in my own area. And I just want to add on the record that the new REO of that particular area, Martina Queally, I have met her in relation to capital projects in the South East area, and she has a new team in place, and they have, there's an analysis after being done of every single project and how they can move them along as quickly as possible. So the second step in the process will involve publishing the next stage of the advertisement to e-tenders before the end of this month, and we'll keep a very, very close eye on this. In relation to the other issue you raised regarding measures being taken to address the shortage of GPs in North Wexford and South Wicklow, under the GMS scheme, the HSE contracts GPs to provide medical services without charge to medical card and GP visit card holders. Where a vacancy arises in a practice with a GMS contract, the HSE becomes actively involved in the recruitment process to find a replacement GP. As of December last, there was 21 GMS vacancies, which is less than 1%. And no vacancies in Wexford or Wicklow. A number of measures have been taken in recent years to increase the numbers of GPs practicing across the country and to improve access to GP services for all patients. Annual intake to the GP training scheme has been significantly increased by approximately 80% from 2019 to 2024, with 350 new entrant places made available for 2024. And I know everybody will welcome this, but I do acknowledge that it takes several years for them to come on stream. Furthermore, the recruitment of GPs from abroad is ongoing. As of October last, there was 114 international medical graduate GPs in practice, and funding has been provided to recruit up to 250 more GPs from outside Ireland this year. Placement of these GPs is targeted to rural and underserved areas. The Minister wishes to assure the Deputy that this Government remains committed to both the continued development of primary care centres, including Gorey, and to increase the number of GPs practising around the country.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Byrne.
Thank you, Minister. And as you know, I'm always very happy that you're here answering questions because of your honesty, and I wish you well in your role. And yes, I very much acknowledge, the 179 primary care centres that have been opened to date, and we have seen excellent primary care centres in Carnew, in Arklow, in Enniscorthy. But my question is, why should the people of Gorey and North Wexford, one of the fastest growing areas in the country, continue to be without a new primary care centre? And where we have seen in the Gorey local electoral area in the inter-census period 2016 to 2022, a 14% growth in population, it's not fair that we continue to have to wait for progress on this, frankly because of HSE incompetence. That they didn't take action in spite of local representatives, including myself, raising that over the years. I am prepared, as you have indicated, that there is a new team in place to give them some space to move on this, but I will not tolerate any further delays, and I will seek to regularly come into the House to raise this issue. I do appreciate as well, on the question of the programme that has been made with regard to additional recruitment of GPs and indeed the training programme. This is very welcome, and I get the point about the GMS scheme, but this is even about people privately wanting to be able to access a GP. It is not uncommon for somebody to be told that they're going to have to wait 3, 4, 5 weeks and longer in order to be able to access a GP in Gorey, and the existing GP surgeries can't take any new patients. So when we see large numbers of people moving into the area, they don't have access to a GP, and it is a really significant problem.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. To conclude, the need for a new primary care centre in Gorey was identified as part of the overall development programme and had progressed. I know you mentioned HSE incompetence, but the selected provider encountered difficulties regarding viability of the project. There was more than one project involved, I know that for a fact. And, you know, when this is under an operational lease model. I suppose it's a new model that they're undertaking to deliver these primary care centres. So in fairness, the fact that the selected provider encountered difficulties regarding viability of this project and others, it was back to the drawing board. It had to be re-tendered before Christmas. I have to say I was as frustrated as you when I heard this news. There's quite a few of the primary care centres in the southeast included in that. But look, we'll keep a very, very close eye to make sure that it is up on e-tenders before the end of the month, and we'll all welcome that progress, seeing as there's two deputies and the Ceann Comhairle from the southeast sitting in the room at the moment. And I also want to just reiterate again that every effort has been made to provide as many GPs as possible. From 23 to 27, between 1.5 and 3 GP graduates will onboard for every expected GP retirement, and that is really positive. But I do take on board the point you said. There are some areas with significant challenges, huge waiting lists, people having to wait longer for GPs that they ever had to do previously, and it can be very, very frustrating. It's difficult for people when they move into a new area. If they haven't a medical card, they can find it hard to become part of a GP's practice, and we are aware of that, and the only way we can resolve it is by having extra GPs, and please God they'll come on stream as soon as possible. Thank you, Deputy, and I've no doubt I'll be back in here again to answer about Gorey Primary Care Centre. Thank you.
I hope not, Minister.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.